Well, newly formed activism organisation South Africans Against Apartheid India are protesting outside the Indian Consulate in Parktown in Johannesburg. This is in opposition of India's adoption of the Citizenship Amendment Act. The law allows migrants an avenue to gain citizenship but excludes Muslims. Over 1,500 protesters have been arrested across India in the past 12 days as police try to quell the very often violent demonstrations. We're going to take you there live now.
Biases which plague the media. Modi's fascism must be connected to the wave of divisiveness, injustice, and right-wing fascism across the world today. The Indian state's violent resistance to change is something we as South Africans know too well. I would like to quote Thomas Sankara. Our revolution will only be worthwhile if in looking back, in looking around, in looking ahead, we can say that the people are, thanks to the revolution, a little happier. Happier because they have clean drinking water, because they have abundant, sufficient food, because they're in excellent health, because they have education, because they have decent housing, because they are better dressed, because they have the right to leisure, because they have enjoyed more freedom, more democracy, more dignity. Our revolution will have a reason to exist only if it can respond concretely to these questions. As South Africans, we must question the worthwhile nature of our liberation movement if it is held in isolation. A revolution is not meant to be preserved, it is meant to be enacted. If it does not look around and seek to liberate the people, if it does not look around and seek to liberate others, then it is not a true revolution. The struggles of the diverse mass of people caught between hardship and a fascist Indian state under Modi, which seeks to oppress them and send them to detention camps, should be recognized and opposed as part of the ongoing revolution to liberate people everywhere. In the same address, Sankara said, "Our revolution is not simply for spouting slogans that are no more than signals used by manipulators, trying to use them as catchwords, as code words, as foil for their own display. Our revolution is and should continue to be the collective effort of revolutionaries to transform reality, to improve the concrete situation of the masses. People are being oppressed. That is not a slogan, that is a reality. Being sent to a detention camp is also almost a reality for thousands of newly stateless people in Assam. How do we transform the reality of the masses of the almost stateless? How do we seek to defend their right to have rights? We should see it as our allied duty to protect and fight for people's liberation across the world, as they fought for ours. Lest we forget that India was the first country to sever trade relations with the apartheid government in 1946 and subsequently imposed a complete diplomatic, commercial, cultural and sports embargo on South Africa. We must be conscious of the role played by the South African Indian Congress in our struggle, as well as the silent role played by the many militant Indian youths who took part in different ways. We as South Africans should feel the need to call an evil by its name. Fascism has no place in today's world. It had no place in the past, nor does it hold any water in the future. As people, we should reject and resist fascism in all its forms. What is currently occurring in India are the forwardings of fascist policies to the point of genocide. We were subjected to it here, at home. We will be witness to it no longer. We should use this moment to be critical of the BJP's nationalist agenda. There are moments which require us to act, and this is one of them. It's almost 2020. How can we allow a state to be so oppressive, so blatantly? And as the newly free, how do we respond to the reshackling of our brothers and sisters by exclusionary ideologies? Using religion as a means of filtering through the population of vulnerable people should be immediately recognized as a form of oppression, as the policy delegitimizes certain people's right to citizenship. Segregation in our lifetime is just unacceptable. This violent act of assimilation is just as violent as apartheid, for it is built on exclusion and dominance of one group of people over another, with religion and caste being the denominator rather than race. We all need to shift our understanding of displaced, indigenous, migrant, and refugee populations as we move into a time where they are becoming more common and more vulnerable. Thus, as people, we must recognize that these are not numbers of regionally ambiguous people. These are people, many of whom have been the backbone of their society for generations, but who will ultimately pay the price for our lack of action. We need now more than ever include in our individual and collective imagination what true decolonial solidarity looks like practically. We the people, for the souls of those lost in transit, must do something. We need to reform so much as humanity. When we as students said fees must fall, we were not just talking about fees. We were also considering how all structures of oppression must fall. Not long ago, the global relevance of this movement was felt the same by brave students protesting fascism in their country. Students at JNU in Delhi protested exorbitant fee hikes under the slogan of fees must fall. They showed solidarity, we must too. Today, Modi calls these same students and the rest of society who has joined them for their voices, terrorists. India, like South Africa, remains a highly unequal society. If Modi cares so much, why are there literal upper class and caste benefits under his administration? A question. Where does Africa stand on the matters of the developing world? Is it at the fringe or at the forefront? We bear witness to corruption. We bear witness to a developing region under the stress of growing pains. Must we not grow? We, as South African students, offer our strength and solidarity. We stand against the CAA and NRC. Amanda! Aweto! Amanda! Aweto!
Thank you, Comrade Solomzi, for linking what is happening in India to our student movements here, to decolonial and revolutionary movements on the African continent and in the global south. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next on the list we have Ms. Peggy Pillay, the co-convener of Johannesburg Against Injustice, a group of social, political, and civic activists and partners with progressive civil society organizations on issues of social justice.
Thank you very much. Friends, comrades, my name is Peggy Pillay, and I'm with a civil society organization called Johannesburg Against Injustice. I'm here with my comrade Sunny Morgan, and we've participated in many such events where human rights issues are at the heart of it. So I have a short message for you today. Essentially what we want to say is we're deeply concerned at what is happening in India presently. The wanton attacks, the violence perpetrated against predominantly Muslim communities and individuals is not acceptable. Any legislation or planned legislation that serves to turn an entire group of people in India into second-class citizens in the country of their birth cannot be acceptable. That gives them, any legislation that gives them the status of immigrants in their country cannot be, of illegal immigrants in their country cannot be acceptable. Any legislation that dehumanizes, that discriminates and oppresses on the basis of religious lines cannot be acceptable. And it is for this reason that Johannesburg Against Injustice stands firmly and stands committed with the citizens and organizations of India, of those in South Africa and around the world, in calling for the revocation of the Citizenship Amendment Bill and the National Treasury of Citizens. We remember all too clearly, comrades, friends, not too long ago, how oppression was legislated in our own country. It may have been along race lines, but it was legislated oppression nonetheless. Many, many lives were lost. Much was sacrificed in our struggle for the democracy that we today enjoy. The Indian government of the time and the people of India stood by us and supported us in our struggle against apartheid. It is therefore tragic, it is unforgivable and unacceptable that a renowned democracy such as India would today legislate into law a bill that serves to dehumanize and discriminate and oppress on the basis of religion. It is indeed heartening for us, and we consider this to be our sliver of hope, when we see the faces of young people, whether it be in India, in Denmark, around the world, or here in South Africa like we see. It lifts our heart to see young people leading the opposition to anything that is oppressive, any law that seeks to discriminate. You are our hope, young people. And we are saying that whilst you stand in support of your compatriots in India, students of universities in India, we stand with you. When you say no to your Muslim compatriots and Muslim communities and citizens being declared a category of other, we will stand with you, because we know that you will refuse and continue to refuse such categorization. From the Arab Spring in 2010 in Tunisia to the global climate crisis movement, we have seen young people leading. And the young people, students of universities in India,